What's up, YouTube? It's the Jack Crypto Guy bringing you a very time-sensitive update. We have a massive week ahead of us when it comes to cryptocurrency and just traditional markets. Now, obviously this morning it was announced that China and the US basically had an agreement with all of their, trade issues that they had kind of sorted out. There's talk of like tariffs that are not going to be as high as anticipated. We have Bitcoin obviously reacting pretty positively to that. Now I'm kind of nervous with like it's going to create a CME gap, but we'll worry about that whenever that comes. I think that when it comes to the overall market, I think that things are kind of shaping up to look really good. We have obviously the CPI reading last week that was a little bit lower than expected, still kind of hot, but I think that that's exactly what they needed to give the Fed to pretty much solidify quantitative easing, which basically means instead of taking money out of the system, they're going to start injecting money into the system, which is going to be really good for risk on assets like cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Now, I think that when it comes to the overall outlook with the macro environment, obviously we have stocks all-time high, gold all-time high, Bitcoin's kind of been lagging, so is crypto. And I think that, considering we had a massive leverage flush, I think that, assuming that we don't have any kind of further disagreements or any kind of irrational kind of statements from the president, I think that we're going to have a pretty bullish outlook when it comes to at least Q4, and the rest kind of remains to be seen. I know a lot of people are on the fence when it comes to Bitcoin and its 4-year cycle, and I am currently of the opinion that at the very least it's going to be prolonged instead of non-existent, or that the top's already in. There's a lot of confluences when it comes to me kind of making this this kind of educated guess. And I think that when you just look at the overall environment, it's kind of signaling that the market wants to go risk on because they need to increase the jobs. They need to basically give away money and put it into the system so that we can thrive as a country. And when you look at just, the whole debt that we have, there's just no way around it. We need to have a cheaper dollar, and we need more money in the system. We need people to have better jobs or more jobs. And we're in this weird state where I think the money is kind of being shifted around, and I think that Wall Street is trying to sniff this out because obviously that's why gold is rallying too. Not to mention a lot of the country central banks as well. It's not just the retail people that are buying gold, it's also countries and stuff like that. And I think that that's just a signal that something has been breaking in the system, maybe that there's not as much trust when it comes to fiat currencies. And so I think that Bitcoin just naturally has to catch a narrative because it's a little bit, relatively speaking, it's pretty new when it comes to gold or precious metals or anything like that. And when you look at things with a flight to safety, I think that the newer generations are going to pick up on Bitcoin. Obviously, JP Morgan just came out and said that they're going to allow people to borrow against their assets with Bitcoin and Ethereum. And, the stable coins is being integrated with Zelle. There's just a lot of things that it's kind of signaling that, crypto is going to be the future, whether it's through Bitcoin being a hedge against inflation, or we have stable coins basically getting integrated as a new financial rail to institute peer-to-peer payments or whatever the case may be. So I'm just really bullish when it comes to, probably the bigger blue chip coins, obviously Bitcoin, Solana, Ethereum, things like that, because I think most applications are going to be either built on top of them or integrated with them. So obviously this next week also is going to be just massive because we have, the government shut down. So that's going to be ongoing. I think it's going to set us up for the longest shutdown we've had in history. We have just enough readings to basically make the Fed cut interest rates and probably signal that we're going to go into quantitative easing. So that's going to be maybe a short-term sell the news event, but I think overall bullish. And I think that, gold is kind of correcting, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it continue to rally. But by nature, whenever these people start making so much money in something like gold after they've been kind of holding it for basically a decade of consolidation, the natural next thing that's going to happen is that Bitcoin is going to start catching a bid because that's going to be the sort of beta play, so to speak, when it comes to returns, right? So they're going to want to make their returns on gold and then kind of speculate a little bit more and pretty much go into something like Bitcoin so they can maximize their returns in the short term and then kind of go from there. So that's why I kind of think that the 4-year cycle is going to be a little bit different this time around. And, I'm pretty bullish, all things considered. I think that we had the biggest, flush in history when it comes to the altcoins in particular. So all of that leverage has been wiped out of the market. And there's just not really any kind of reason that would make sense to me as to why the 4-year cycle would be over. I just think that things are going to be too bullish going forward because we've been kind of, in a weird kind of state when it comes to the country, the dollar, and everybody's sort of feeling the pain. And you just naturally, you have to bring the economy back. And typically these people, they don't like failure. Obviously, Trump is very egotistical when it comes to his like metrics of success, right? And the major ones are going to be real estate and the stock market. That's like the main two things that he kind of says, that's what he kind of prides his success on. It's like, stocks are at all record highs and whatever the case may be. Not to mention, he's kind of like, he campaigned on being the crypto president, the first crypto president. And when you look at that, like there's just no way that he's going to want to look bad when it comes to the price of Bitcoin or crypto while it's like his term and that's like what he ran on. Not to mention that he recently pardoned CZ seemingly out of nowhere. And I don't think that that's by coincidence, because Binance is like the main exchange when it comes to crypto. Like they're the mammoth. Like they dominate literally every single market. They're an offshore exchange. And I think that with that pardon comes either some sort of like indirect partnership with Trump. There's a lot of speculation that they're kind of like in cahoots when it comes to the World Liberty Finance, which is Trump's project. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them work kind of, some sort of like integrated partnership with that, or maybe they're going to bring Binance onshore and they're going to have to regulate it like any other exchange. And that means there's going to be a lot less volatility, I think, in the market, at least like whenever they're like doing like flush positions, because usually Binance is the one selling all these spot positions. It typically leads to these like leverage flushes. And so it's just going to be very interesting to see. Now, obviously, we're going to have a lot of news coming up next week. So make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, share this video with a friend. And as always, comment what you want to see soon. Bye.